Gulliver's Travels, Lilliput, by Jonathan Swift. Retold by Marie Crook. Penguin Kids, Level 5. Copyright Pearson Education Limited, 2014. Gulliver was a very clever young man who loved to have adventures. He had a nice life, but Gulliver wanted to see the world. Gulliver enjoyed learning new languages and meeting new people. So, when Gulliver could, he left his life behind and went on voyages across the sea. He wanted to meet new people and to see and learn new things. This story is about Gulliver's greatest adventure ever. When Gulliver left England for the South Seas, he had no idea of the adventures to come. Gulliver and his crew climbed on their ship, the Antelope. They felt excited and ready for their long journey. But after travelling for a long time in terrible weather, things started to go wrong. The wind blew hard, and the seas were dangerous. Gulliver was the first to see the large rock in front of the Antelope. The crew fought against the wind, but suddenly the Antelope hit the rock. With a terrible crash, the ship broke in two. Gulliver swam for his life in the sea. He was scared. The water was very deep, and he could not feel the bottom. Gulliver swam and swam. He looked for the crew, but he could not see them. He was alone. When he arrived on land, Gulliver lay on the beach and fell into the deepest sleep. Gulliver woke slowly. He felt terrible. He did not know where he was. He remembered the crew and he felt sad. Where were they? He tried to move his hand. He could not. He tried to move his head, but he could not. He tried to move his legs and feet, but he could not move any of his body at all. It was hot, and Gulliver could feel the sun on his face and body. Was this a bad dream? Then Gulliver felt something move on his leg. What was it? A small animal? The thing moved slowly up Gulliver's body and stood on his chest. Gulliver opened his eyes and cried out, "What?" It was a tiny person. This person was only 15 centimeters high. He looked angry and a little afraid. In his hand, the tiny man had a bow and arrow. He pointed it at Gulliver. Gulliver could not believe his eyes. Suddenly, he felt more things moving on his body. They were on his arms and legs and chest. There were a lot of the tiny people on Gulliver, and they all had bows and arrows. Gulliver shouted as loudly as he could. He could not move, and these little people wanted to hurt him. Gulliver heard tiny cries. When he shouted, some of the little people fell to the ground. Gulliver tried to free his arms and legs, but he could not move. He looked down and saw a lot of tiny ropes which fixed him to the ground. He pulled his arm up as hard as he could, and it came free. Then he did the same with his legs. Gulliver sat up, and all the tiny people cried out. To them, Gulliver was huge. Then Gulliver felt a shower of tiny arrows on his face and body. The little people were afraid of Gulliver. Their arrows hurt him, but he was not afraid. He was just tired and so hungry. He wanted to speak to the little people, but he did not understand their language, and they did not understand his. So he looked at them and pointed to his mouth. A little man in fine clothes came towards Gulliver. It was the emperor of the little people. The emperor smiled at Gulliver. He told the little people to drop their bows and arrows. Then he spoke to some of them and pointed. Now they are going to get food, thought Gulliver. His stomach made a loud noise, and some of the little people fell to the ground. They were scared. Gulliver laughed, and the emperor laughed with him. I'm going to like it here, said Gulliver. And the emperor, who did not understand a word, laughed again. Soon the little people brought food. Everything was tiny. They brought tiny chickens, tiny fish, tiny plates of bread, salad and vegetables, and tiny cakes and sweets. It was all tiny, but they brought a lot. Gulliver felt much better after a good dinner. After some time, the little people started to work on a place where Gulliver could sleep. They all brought their beds and blankets and put them together to make a big bed for their new friend. Gulliver learned their language. The name of the island, the people told him, was Lilliput. The people were Lilliputians. Gulliver enjoyed talking to the Lilliputians and playing with them. He was so big to them. He emptied his pockets and showed the Lilliputians his watch. They could not believe the noise it made. He showed them some coins, which were nearly as big as they were. And he showed them his glasses, which to the Lilliputians were huge. The Lilliputians loved Gulliver. Dancers came and danced on his hands. Boys and girls played games in his hair. Horse riders jumped over his hands on their horses. The Lilliputians brought him all the food they could find for him, and they made him some wonderful new clothes. Gulliver was very happy. But he was the kind of man who loved adventures, and he was ready for a new adventure now. Gulliver spoke to the emperor, and the emperor agreed. Gulliver was free. He could go where he liked. Gulliver was excited. He decided to visit the city. It was not a long walk for Gulliver. He just had to be very careful not to step on the little people who he met on the way. In the city, Gulliver visited the emperor's palace. It was beautiful, but very tiny, so Gulliver could not go inside. Then Gulliver had an idea. I know, Gulliver thought. I'll step over the wall into the Emperor's garden, then I'll lie down and look through the windows. The Emperor's wife laughed when she saw him, and she put her hand out of the window. Gulliver took the tiny hand and kissed it. Gulliver enjoyed meeting people, so he spoke to a lot of people in the city. He learned that Lilliput was at war with the people of Blefuscu, a small island near Lilliput. "The Blefuscans have a lot of warships," one of the Lilliputians told Gulliver. "Lilliput is in danger, Gulliver. Can you help us?" "Yes, I can," Gulliver answered. Now remember, Gulliver was a very clever man, and he thought of a plan. But he kept his plan a secret. With the help of the Lilliputians, Gulliver made a lot of ropes and hooks. The Lilliputians did not understand how this could help them. Gulliver took the ropes and hooks and walked out into the water near the port of Blefuscu. The Lilliputians watched. The Blefuscans did not see Gulliver because his body was under the water. Then, suddenly, he was beside them in the water near their ships. The Blefuscans were very afraid. Gulliver was so big. They shot at him with their bows and arrows. Gulliver had an idea. He put his hand in his pocket and took out his glasses. Gulliver put on his glasses. Now the Blefuscan arrows could not hurt his eyes. Gulliver carefully fixed the ropes and the hooks to the Blefuscan warships. The Blefuscans put down their bows and arrows. They watched and waited. Gulliver held the ropes and slowly began to pull the ships along. The ships moved all together in a half-moon shape. The Blefuscans could not believe it. Gulliver pulled the ships all the way to the port of Lilliput. The Emperor and all the people of Lilliput waited at the port. They saw the ships before they saw Gulliver, who was up to his chest in water. Then they heard Gulliver cry out in his loudest voice, "Long live the Emperor of Lilliput!" The Lilliputians clapped their tiny hands and shouted as loudly as they could. The war was over. "Thank you, Gulliver!" they cried. When they all shouted together, their voices were very loud. But some people in Lilliput were not very happy with Gulliver. The Emperor gave Gulliver everything he wanted. Flimnap, the Emperor's friend, felt jealous of Gulliver.
"Gulliver is too large,"
he said to the Emperor.
"He eats too much. He costs too much."
Some people said that Flimnap wanted to hurt Gulliver. Gulliver was afraid. It is time to leave Lilliput, thought Gulliver. I'd like to go home now. Gulliver told the Emperor and the Empress how he felt. They understood.
"You are a man who loves adventures, Gulliver," they said. "Maybe it's time for a new one now."
Gulliver lay on the ground to speak to them. He kissed their tiny hands. "But how can I leave?" he asked them. "I'm too big for all your ships, and I can't swim all the way to England."
"You helped us," said the Emperor, "and now we will help you."
The Emperor asked all the Lilliputians to come together.
"We are going to build the biggest boat ever," he cried.
The Lilliputians worked hard for days and nights. They cut down their largest trees and carried the wood to the port. They began to build a huge boat for their huge friend. Gulliver helped too. He carried the heaviest pieces of wood and put them together to make the boat. Flimnap did not want to help, but he was happy about Gulliver's plan.
"There will be more food for us now," he said. "There will be more of everything for us."
The other Lilliputians did not agree. The Emperor did not agree. They loved Gulliver, and they wanted him to stay. But they understood. Gulliver had new places to visit, new people to meet, and new adventures to enjoy. The Emperor gave Gulliver some tiny coins and a picture of Gulliver in Lilliput with his friends. "Thank you," said Gulliver, "for everything." Gulliver was sad. He was also scared. His boat was wonderful, but it was still small for him. "I won't get all the way back to England in this," he thought. Gulliver walked into the water. He pulled the boat behind him. Then he climbed inside and began the voyage home. Gulliver travelled across the seas for many days. He was hungry, thirsty, and tired. And then something wonderful happened. Gulliver saw a small island in front of him. He pulled his boat onto the beach and walked onto the sand. His legs felt weak. He fell to the ground and slept for a long time. When Gulliver woke, the sun was hot on his face. But Gulliver was alone, and he felt a little sad without his Lilliputian friends. Gulliver found some food on the island. He ate and felt better. He sat on the sand and looked out to sea. Suddenly, he saw a huge ship in the water. It was very far from him, but he could just see it was an English ship. "At last!" he cried. "I'm going home." When the ship stopped near the island, Gulliver swam and shouted as loudly as he could. "Please, don't leave me here!" he cried. The ship's crew heard him, and they helped him onto the ship. Gulliver drank some water and ate a meal. Then he told the crew his story. "It feels so good to speak English," he said. The crew were kind, and they listened well. but they could not believe their ears.
"Tiny people,"
they said.
15 centimetres high? How can this be true?"
"It is true," cried Gulliver. He started to feel angry.
"Why won't you believe me?"
Then Gulliver remembered. He put his hand in his pocket and pulled out the tiny coins and the picture of him in Lilliput with his tiny friends next to him. He showed them to the crew. The crew's eyes were wide.
"Ah, maybe this story is true," they said.
When Gulliver returned to England, he told his story again and again. Some people believed him, and some did not. Gulliver just smiled. Gulliver did not stay in England for long. His ears became bored of the English language. His eyes became bored of the people, who all looked the same to him. He wanted to see new things, hear new things, and learn new things. This was Gulliver. He loved adventures. It was time for a new one.